There is a growing conversation happening across the world. More and more women are choosing to stay single. And while many people try to explain this with quick opinions or shallow assumptions, the truth is much deeper. It's not just about relationships, and it's not just about men or women. It's about change, a shift in mindset and priorities in self-worth and in what people are willing or no longer willing to accept in their lives. For a long time, relationships were not always a choice. Many women stayed in relationships out of necessity, financial dependence, social pressure, or fear of being alone. But today, things are different. Women are more independent, more educated, and more aware of their value than ever before. And with that awareness comes a powerful shift. They are no longer willing to settle for relationships that do not align with their standards, their peace, or their goals. This is where many people misunderstand the situation. They assume that being single means something is wrong, that it's a failure, that it's something to fix. But for many women today, being single is not a problem, it's a decision. A decision to protect their peace, a decision to focus on growth, a decision to wait for something meaningful rather than accept something convenient. And this is not about perfection. It's not about expecting a flawless partner or an ideal relationship. It's about clarity, knowing what you want, what you need, and what you refuse to tolerate. Because once you reach that level of clarity, your standards naturally rise. And when your standards rise, your options become more selective. But there is also another side to this reality, one that is often ignored. High standards require high self-awareness, because it's easy to say, I deserve better. But it's much harder to ask, am I also becoming better? A strong, healthy relationship is not just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person. And that requires growth, maturity, and emotional intelligence from both sides. Many women stay single not because they can't find someone, but because they refuse to lose themselves in the process. They have seen what happens when people settle. They have experienced relationships that drained them, limited them, or forced them to compromise their identity. And once you've experienced that, you become more careful. You become more intentional. There is also a shift in how fulfillment is defined. In the past, relationships were often seen as the primary source of happiness. But now, many women are building lives that are already full. Careers, passions, friendships, personal growth. And when your life is already meaningful, a relationship is no longer something you need. It's something you choose. And that changes everything. Because when you don't need a relationship to feel complete, you don't tolerate one that makes you feel less than complete. You don't stay where you are not valued. You don't chase where you are not respected. And you don't settle for something that disrupts your peace. However, this independence also comes with challenges. It can create distance. It can make it harder to find balance between independence and connection, because relationships require vulnerabilities. They require compromise. They require emotional openness. And when you have built a life on self-reliance, allowing someone into that space can feel uncomfortable. So the reality is not as simple as, this is why women stay single. It is layered. It is complex. It is about growth, standards, independence, and sometimes even fear. But above all, it is about choice, a conscious choice to prioritize self-worth over societal expectations. And that is where the real conversation begins. As you look deeper into this topic, you begin to understand that it is not just about independence or high standards. It is also about awareness. A level of awareness that changes how someone sees relationships entirely. When a person becomes more aware of their emotional needs, their boundaries, and their long-term vision for life, they naturally become more selective. Not because they are trying to reject people, but because they are trying to protect their peace. And once you reach that level of awareness, you cannot go back to ignoring red flags or accepting situations that do not align with who you are becoming. One of the biggest reasons many women remain single today is because they have experienced enough to know what they don't want. Past relationships, observations, and even watching others go through unhealthy situations teach powerful lessons. They teach what disrespect looks like. They teach what emotional unavailability feels like. They teach how draining the wrong relationship can be. And once those lessons are learned, it becomes difficult to ignore them. You begin to notice patterns faster. You recognize behaviors earlier. And instead of hoping things will change, you choose to walk away sooner. There is also a shift in how time is valued. People are no longer willing to invest years into something uncertain, unhealthy, or unbalanced. Time is seen as something precious. And this changes decision-making. Instead of staying and trying to fix everything, many choose to leave when they see that something is not aligned. Not because they are impatient, but because they are intentional. They understand that staying in the wrong situation has a cost that includes emotional energy, mental peace, and personal growth. But there is also a deeper psychological layer that cannot be ignored. Sometimes staying single is not just about strength. It can also be about protection. After experiencing hurt, disappointment, or emotional pain, it is natural to build walls, to become more cautious, to avoid situations that could lead to the same outcome. And while this can be healthy to a certain extent, it can also create distance. Because the same walls that protect you can prevent connection. This is where balance becomes important. Because emotional intelligence is not just about avoiding pain. It is about understanding it. It is about learning from past experiences without allowing them to control your future. And this applies to everyone, not just women. Because if fear becomes stronger than openness, it becomes difficult to build something meaningful, no matter how high your standards are. Another important factor is expectations, and this is often misunderstood. Having standards is not the same as having unrealistic expectations. Standards are about values, respect, communication, emotional maturity, consistency. But expectations can sometimes become idealized images of what a partner should be. And when expectations are too rigid or disconnected from reality, it can make it difficult for anyone to meet them. This doesn't mean lowering standards. It means understanding the difference between what is essential and what is negotiable. Because no one is perfect. Every person comes with strengths and flaws. And a healthy relationship is not about finding perfection. It is about finding compatibility, growth, and mutual respect. At the same time, many women today are prioritizing themselves in a way that was not always encouraged in the past. They are focusing on personal growth, career development, mental health, and building a life that feels fulfilling on its own. And when you are deeply invested and become more careful about who you allow into your life, because not everyone adds value. Some people bring distraction, confusion, or instability. And this is where the concept of peace becomes central. Peace is no longer seen as something optional. It is seen as essential. If a relationship disrupts your mental and emotional balance more than it adds to your life, it no longer feels worth it. And this is a powerful shift because it changes the way decisions are made. It shifts the focus from not being alone to being at peace. However, this also requires self-reflection. Because while it is important to recognize external factors, it is equally important to look inward, to ask difficult questions. Am I open to connection? Am I communicating clearly? Am I allowing space for growth both in myself and in others? Because a relationship is not just about finding the right person. It is about being in the right mindset to build something together. The reality is staying single can come from many different places. Strength, independence, clarity, past experiences, personal goals, or even emotional protection. And none of these are inherently negative, but understanding the why behind it is important. Because awareness allows you to make conscious choices instead of automatic ones. And as this awareness grows, something becomes clear. Being single is not the opposite of success. Being in a relationship is not the definition of happiness. What truly matters is alignment. Alignment with yourself. Alignment with your values. Alignment with the life you are trying to build. And until that alignment is found with another person, many will choose to walk alone. As we go deeper into this topic, it becomes impossible to ignore the impact of modern life and how much it has changed the way people approach relationships. Today, connection is easier than ever, but meaningful connection has become more difficult. Social media, constant comparison, endless options, these things have reshaped expectations in ways that are often unrealistic. And for many women, this creates a situation where they are not just choosing a partner, they are navigating a complex environment filled with mixed signals, surface-level interactions, and emotional inconsistency. There is a growing awareness around emotional availability. In the past, many people stayed in relationships even when emotional needs were not met. But today, there is more understanding of what healthy emotional connection looks like. Communication, consistency, effort, respect. These are no longer seen as extra. They are seen as essential. And when these things are missing, many women are choosing not to stay, not to fix, not to chase, but to walk away. One of the biggest shifts is in how effort is perceived. Many women are no longer willing to carry the emotional weight of a relationship alone. They are no longer willing to be the only one trying, the only one communicating, the only one investing energy, because a relationship is not meant to be one-sided. It requires mutual effort. And when that balance is missing, staying single becomes a more peaceful option than staying in something that feels draining. At the same time, there is a deeper understanding of self-worth. Not in an ego-driven way, but in a grounded, self-aware way. Knowing your worth means recognizing when something is not aligned. It means understanding that attention is not the same as respect. That attraction is not the same as commitment. That words are not the same as actions. And once you truly understand these differences, you become less likely to settle for less than what you deserve. But there is also an internal challenge that comes with this level of awareness. The more you understand yourself, the more selective you become. And while that protects you from unhealthy situations, it can also reduce the number of people you feel genuinely compatible with. Because compatibility is not just about attraction. It is about values, mindset, emotional maturity, and life direction. And finding alignment on all of these levels is not easy. This is why many women today are not just looking for a relationship. They are looking for the right relationship. One that adds value, not confusion. One that brings growth, not limitation. One that feels stable, not uncertain. And until they find that, they are willing to wait. Because they understand that being alone is not as difficult as being in the wrong relationship. Another important factor is emotional independence. Many women today are no longer dependent on a relationship for their happiness. They have built lives that are already fulfilling. They have goals, passions, friendships, and a sense of identity that exists outside of a relationship. And when you already feel complete, you approach relationships differently. You are not looking for someone to complete you. You are looking for someone to complement your life. However, this independence can sometimes create distance. Because relationships require vulnerability. They require opening up, trusting, and allowing someone into your personal space. And when you have spent a long time building your life independently, letting someone in can feel like a risk. Not because you don't want connection, but because you don't want disruption. This is where emotional balance becomes important. Because while independence is powerful, connection is also important. And finding the balance between protecting your peace and allowing space for connection is one of the biggest challenges in modern relationships. There is also the reality of timing. Sometimes people meet the right person at the wrong time. When one person is ready and the other is not. When priorities don't align. When growth levels are different. And in those situations, no matter how strong the connection is, it doesn't work. And instead of forcing it, many women are choosing to walk away, trusting that the right connection will come at the right time. As you continue to observe this shift, you begin to understand something important. It's not that women don't want relationships. It's that they no longer want relationships at any cost. They are no longer willing to sacrifice their peace, their growth, or their identity just to avoid being alone. They are no longer willing to ignore red flags, accept inconsistency, or settle for less than they deserve. And this is not just a woman issue. It reflects a broader change in how people value themselves in their lives. Because at the core of it all, this is about standards, awareness, and choice. The choice to wait, the choice to walk away, the choice to protect your peace. And sometimes the choice to stay single until something truly meaningful comes along. As this conversation goes deeper, it becomes important to move beyond just observation and start focusing on balance. Because while independence, awareness, and high standards are powerful, they also come with responsibility. It is easy to point out what is missing in others, but true growth begins when you also examine yourself. Because a meaningful relationship is not built by one perfect person. It is built by two people who both willing to grow, adjust, and understand each other. One of the biggest misunderstandings in modern relationships is the confusion between standards and perfection. Standards are necessary, they protect your values, your boundaries, and your emotional well-being. But when standards turn into perfection, they can become unrealistic. No person will meet every expectation. No relationship will be flawless. And when expectations are too rigid, it becomes difficult to build anything real, because real relationships require patience, compromise, and understanding. This is where emotional maturity plays a major role. Emotional maturity means knowing what truly matters and what can be worked on. It means understanding that growth is a process, not something that happens instantly. It means recognizing that people are not fixed. They can evolve, learn, and improve. And sometimes the ability to grow together is more important than starting perfectly. At the same time, it is equally important not to confuse compromise with self-sacrifice. A healthy relationship requires adjustment from both sides, but it should never require you to lose your identity, your values, or your peace. The key is balance, knowing when to be flexible and when to stand firm. And that balance comes from self-awareness, not from fear of being alone. Another important factor is communication. Many relationships fail not because of lack of connection, but because of lack of clarity. People expect to be understood without expressing themselves clearly. They assume instead of asking. They hold back instead of communicating openly. And over time, this creates distance. For any relationship to work, communication must be honest, direct, and consistent. And that requires effort from both sides. There is also the role of timing and readiness. Sometimes, staying single is not about rejecting others. It is about working on yourself. Personal growth takes time. Healing from past experiences takes time. Building emotional stability takes time. And if someone enters a relationship without being ready, it can lead to confusion, conflict, and unnecessary pain. So in many cases, staying single is not avoidance. It is preparation. It is also important to recognize that independence should not turn into isolation. There is a difference between being comfortable alone and being closed off. Being comfortable alone means you value your space and your peace. But being closed off means you are not allowing opportunities for connection. And this is where many people struggle. They protect themselves so much that they unintentionally block meaningful relationships. The goal is not to choose between independence and connection. The goal is to create a balance where both can exist, where you can maintain your identity while also building something with someone else, where you can be strong individually but also open emotionally. Another key aspect is understanding that relationships are not always easy. Social media often shows idealized versions of love, perfect moments, constant happiness, effortless connection. But real relationships involve challenges. Misunderstandings happen, differences exist, and growth requires effort. The question is not whether challenges will come, but how both people handle them. This is why mindset matters so much. If someone expects everything to be perfect, they will leave at the first sign of difficulty. But if someone understands that growth requires patience and effort, they will approach challenges differently. They will communicate, adapt, and work through issues instead of walking away immediately. At the same time, it is important to recognize when something is truly not working. Not every relationship is meant to last. And staying in the wrong situation out of fear or attachment can be just as harmful as unrealistic expectations. This is where clarity becomes important, knowing when to stay and grow and when to walk away and move forward. As you reflect on all of this, it becomes clear that the reason many women stay single is not simple. It is not just about standards, independence, or modern dating. It is about a combination of awareness, experience, personal growth, and conscious choice. And the deeper truth is this: staying single is not always about rejecting others. Sometimes it is about building yourself. Sometimes it is about waiting for alignment. Sometimes it is about protecting your peace. But at the same time, growth also means staying open. Open to connection. Open to understanding. Open to the possibility that the right relationship is not perfect, but it is real, balanced, and meaningful. Because in the end, the goal is not just to stay single, and it is not just to be in a relationship. The goal is to build a life and a connection that aligns with who you truly are. In the end, this entire conversation leads to one powerful realization. Being single is no longer something to fear, it is something to understand. For many women today, it is not a result of failure, but a reflection of growth. It reflects a shift in priorities, a deeper awareness of self-worth, and a stronger desire for a life that feels aligned, peaceful, and meaningful. And when you truly understand this, the question is no longer, why are so many women single? But rather, what has changed in the way people see themselves in relationships? The truth is, people are no longer willing to lose themselves just to be with someone. They are no longer willing to ignore their needs, silence their voice, or compromise their peace for the sake of being in a relationship. And this is not about rejecting love. It is about redefining it. Love is no longer just about presence. It is about quality. It is about emotional connection, mutual respect, shared values, and growth. And if those elements are missing, being alone feels more honest than being in something that feels incomplete. There is also a deeper level of courage in choosing to stay single. Because it is not always easy. It means facing your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own solitude. It means building your life without depending on someone else to fill the gaps. And that requires strength. It requires patience. It requires a strong sense of identity. But at the same time, it also builds resilience. It builds clarity. It builds a life that is not dependent on external validation. However, the journey does not end with independence. True growth is not just about being strong alone. It is about being strong and open at the same time. Because while independence gives you stability, connection brings depth. And life is not meant to be lived in extremes. It is not about choosing between being alone or being with someone. It is about finding balance, where you can maintain your individuality while also building something meaningful with another person. This is where emotional intelligence becomes important. Because a healthy relationship is not built on perfection, but on understanding. Understanding yourself, understanding the other person, and understanding how to navigate differences with respect and patience. And this applies to everyone, because no matter how much the world changes, the foundation of a strong relationship remains the same: communication, trust, effort, and mutual growth. There is also an important truth that must be accepted. No one will meet every expectation. Every person has flaws. Every relationship has challenges. And waiting for something perfect can sometimes lead to missed opportunities. This does not mean lowering standards, but it means recognizing the difference between what is essential and what is ideal. Because real connection is not about perfection. It is about compatibility, effort, and shared growth over time. At the same time, it is important not to ignore the power of timing. Sometimes, people are ready at different stages in life. Sometimes the right connection comes later, not earlier. And forcing something before you are ready or before the situation is right often leads to disappointment. This is why patience plays such an important role. Not passive waiting, but active growth. Continuing to build yourself while staying open to the possibility of connection. As everything comes together, you begin to see the full picture. Staying single is not just about independence, and being in a relationship is not just about connection. Both have their value. Both have their challenges, and both require awareness, maturity, and intention. The real goal is not to fit into a label, not to prove something to society, not to rush into something out of fear of being alone. The real goal is alignment. Alignment with your values. Alignment with your emotional needs. Alignment with the life you are building. And when that alignment is not found, choosing to stay single becomes a form of self-respect. But when that alignment is found, choosing to build a relationship becomes a form of growth. And that is the balance that defines modern relationships. So instead of asking why so many women stay single, the better question is, are people becoming more aware of what they truly want? Are they becoming more selective with their time, energy, and emotions? Are they choosing peace over pressure, clarity over confusion, and growth over comfort? Because if the answer is yes, then staying single is not the issue. It is a reflection of change. A change in mindset, a change in priorities, a change in self-worth. And in that change lies something powerful. The ability to choose not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of clarity. Because in the end, being single is not about being alone. And being in a relationship is not about being complete. What truly matters is this, that whatever path you choose, it reflects who you are becoming.